It took an improbable 4-point play from an unlikely candidate, but the Tar Heels keep their postseason hopes in decent shape, at least for another day.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Monday, January 6th, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, and you're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you so much for making us your first listen or watch to get your brand new week started. Special shout out to all you everydayers checking in with us, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord family, and of course, our great Locked On Tar Heels insiders. Let's get right into it. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, North Carolina beats Notre Dame 74-73. We covered most of the nitty-gritty of things, as I like to do, in Saturday's reaction postcast. So make sure to check that out if you want to go even more in depth with the game. We'll talk some big picture stuff here. We'll have our Four Corners recap. We will get to the weekend whip around, Shady Stat of the game, all sorts of great stuff. Unfortunately, still no Seth Trimble. More on that in Tuesday's show because I want to really unpack what is Carolina going to do when he gets back. Ian Jackson carries on his historic scoring streak, and so we got to reckon with that. All that coming up. But let's get into this. Holy smokes, the ending. We talked Friday on the preview show for this Notre Dame game, just strictly about how important a game this was against Notre Dame. Not because Notre Dame is phenomenal or because this game specifically itself matters. It's just a game Carolina simply can't lose because of the situation they've put themselves in. Now, that's basically going to be every game. Most of the rest of the season is like, hey, this game's critically important because Carolina has to rack up wins to try to offset some of these losses because the losses have piled up and the Tar Heels are now 9-6. And so it did. It took this basically improbable 4-point play from Elliot Cadeau with the postseason hopes of the season, at least at some level, on the line. They were already getting kind of tenuous, and you lose this game, your first quad 2 game, and now you're in an even deeper world of hurt. But thankfully, because of Elliot's play, because of some other key plays down the stretch, Drake Powell's 3, Jalen Withers 3, some nice defense from Jalen Washington, other stuff like that, Carolina just simply found a way to get it done. Now, does this ensure and does this make certain that Carolina is going to turn a corner? Absolutely not. By no means. But what it does mean is that the Tar Heels notched a win. And ultimately, that's what matters. Whether it's 30 or 1, you won. You got this W. But what this game does do, getting this road win, is it gives them life. It gives them the opportunity to look to fight another day and to feel at least, pretty solid about postseason hope. I mean, because that's the point we're getting to now in this conversation is if Carolina starts taking many more losses, NCAA tournament is going to be gone outside of winning the ACC tournament. And so it's almost like we need to get to the point of putting a Carolina, like a countdown on. Carolina can only allow themselves this many more losses. And of course, it depends on who the losses are against. But you get my point. There are only so many more losses you can handle this season and still make the NCAA tournament. So this win gives Carolina hope for another day. What's interesting, and our friend, the Nintendo nerd from Locked On Tar Heels Discord pointed this out, is that the shot that Elliot Cadeau made to basically tie this game and then the free throw to win it, that shot was from almost the identical spot on the floor that Elliot missed the shot that would have tied the Kansas game as the buzzer sounded. Now, the difference in this one is that had the free throw after that, and there was still time left on the clock. His shot against Kansas, that was it, and that was all. But right at the same spot on the floor, had to do some relocating, got the shot off. just ever so slightly. It looked good in online against Kansas. In real time, I remember thinking, oh, overtime. It hit front rim and fell off. This one goes in and he's fouled. And so it's like, man, how neat and how important that you play these non-conference games at these high-level opportunities that you do, because Elliot Cadeau's game-winning shot was a shot that he's taken before in a similar, if not more high-pressured scenario at Kansas. And so this one, it's like, yeah, I've done this before in a game in an almost identical scenario from this spot on the floor. That's why you play those games. If you're interested in seeing how close it is, I put it out on all my social media channels so you can watch the video of it. I just put both videos in together. It's crazy. And what it's starting to feel like now, if we're being honest, is that there's really no point in watching Carolina until the final 4 minutes of the game, because they're either going to start hot like they did at Notre Dame on Saturday and kind of collapse down the stretch a little bit until they find their legs, or they're going to have a slow, terrible first half, catch up furiously, and get back in the game. Regardless of whichever way they play it, you start watching about 4 minutes, it's probably a tie game, and Carolina is either going to fail to execute down the stretch, or they're going to figure out a way to get it done. Here's what I mean. Think about it. Against Kansas, get there, get a lead, and then Kansas makes the plays down the stretch. Florida, no. Can't get a defensive rebound. Louisville, no, same kind of scenario. UCLA, yes, Carolina executed, pulled it off, did what they needed to do. This Notre Dame game, yeah, they figured it out. Several others like that, but you get my point. If you just tune in with about 4 minutes left, that's all you really need to watch. Now, obviously, we're not going to do that, but that is what this season has been. And with all those tight scenarios and others, I mean, yes, Carolina is 9-6 from a record standpoint, but if things had gone a certain way, they could be like 12-3 right now. Or if things had gone another certain way, they could be like 6-9 right now. That's how thin the margins have been this season, for better and for worse. Like at some level, it makes you think like, dang, it's just right there. And it feels like we should be able to snatch it, but we haven't been able to. And at another level, it's like, ooh, fortunate we came back against UCLA. Fortunate we came back against Dayton. Those kind of things are all in play. As we think about this shot from Elliot Cadeau, which if Carolina turns things around, think about how massive this shot is going to be. It would be similar to had Carolina beaten Michigan State. Think how big that Seth Trimble game-tying three would have been. It's like that. I do have a couple corrections, though. Adam Lucas, in his Rapid Reactions article, wrote, quote, "But even for this bunch of Tar Heels, winning a road game on a 4-point play from the team's worst 3-point shooter by percentage is a little extreme." I hate to say this, but Elliot Cadeau is not the team's worst 3-point shooter by percentage. You know who it is? It's RJ. RJ Davis, by percentage, is a worse 3-point shooter than Elliot right now. Now, really, Jalen Washington is as well, but he's only taken 7 attempts. He doesn't really qualify. He's 0 for 7, though. Right now, Elliot is 11 for 41. That's 26.8%, 26.83 to be a little more specific, while RJ is 30 for 112, which is 26.79%. So Elliot ever so slightly better than RJ, but both of them closer to 25% than they are to 30% shooting from three. Like, so yes, I'm quibbling, and it doesn't really matter because they're both shooting under 30%. But still, I don't think I'd really put that together just because of how bad RJ's shooting. Not only is it bad, of players that qualify, he's the worst 3-point shooter on the team this season by percentage. And that's frustrating. I want to disagree with Coach Davis a little bit on his post-game remarks because of what we've just saying about how important this game was to maintain Carolina's kind of postseason standing as it is now. He said, quote, "We needed this one. It wasn't a need game. That's my quibble, but we needed it for our confidence. We needed to play well, and we did that. Today, I felt like we played Carolina basketball, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." He said it wasn't a need game. And so I don't disagree about needing it for their confidence. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Absolutely. What I disagree with was Coach Davis's statement that this wasn't a need game, Because imagine with me, if you will, a world where Carolina doesn't win this game. Elliot Schade doesn't go down. It's as simple as that. The Tar Heels, we would be talking about right now, are 8-7 overall, 1-2 in ACC play. The win took Carolina from 46th in the net up to 44th on Saturday. The loss probably would have dropped them into the 50s somewhere. This was a quad 2 game. Funny enough, it's Carolina's first quad 2 game they've played this season. Not just like first quad 2 game to win. Literally, they had not played a game that was a quad 2 game yet. But the thing is, with having so many quad 1 losses where Carolina is 2-6 in quad 1, if you can avoid losses in any other quadrant, 2, 3, or 4, that really helps offset that. Typically we talk about at least avoid 3 and 4. But because of all the sheer volume of losses, avoiding losses in quad 2 is massive and critical as well. So not losing this quad 2 game is a big time resume help for the Tar Heels. It wouldn't have been a death sentence because quad 2s aren't, but combined with everything else that happens, it would have put Carolina in a really bad spot. So I disagree with Coach Davis. I think this was a need game, as almost every game is going to be now. And really, shouldn't Carolina be treating it that way? Because of when you don't have like this sheer next level talent and sheer perfect roster construction, with Carolina does not have, they've got to be so locked in and dialed in on every game that every game should be a need game. So I disagree with Coach Davis on that. And I don't like rock the disagreeing with the coach boat very often. But speaking of, I do have a point of critique with the end of game strategy. Remember, Carolina was down 3 with about 30 seconds left, and Elliot Cadeau went and got that quick layup to get Carolina back within 1, and then everything else that happened, 2 free throws for Notre Dame, and then the Elliot Cadeau 3. And I said, oh, so smart of Carolina to go ahead and take the quick 2, because then you prolong the game. Well, turns out it was smart by Elliot Cadeau, and I do not believe it was smart by the Carolina coaching staff. Here's what I mean. In Adam Lucas's Rapid Reactions article that I referenced a second ago, he mentioned that, quote, Carolina had actually drawn up a play for a 3-pointer when trailing by 3 with 29 seconds left, but Cadeau saw an opening and took an immediate 2-pointer. What are we doing? That is not sound basketball strategy at all. No clue why that was the play that Carolina had drawn up there. If you missed that 3-point attempt to tie the game and Notre Dame gets the rebound, you then have to foul them because you're down 3 with under 30 seconds, meaning the shot clock is off and they can just otherwise hold the ball. They go to the free throw line. If they're in double bonus, if they make just one of them, it's now a 2-possession game. If they make 2 of them, it's now a 5-point game. What are you going to do? You're going to go down and you're going to jack up another 3 because you put yourself in this bad position. The quick 2, on the other hand, that Elliott chose to took allows you to keep great game pressure on Notre Dame because now they're only up 1. They've got to get the ball in bounds, avoid Carolina's traps, get the ball across half court before 10 seconds. And then if they do, and then Carolina sends them to the free throw line, they've got to hit both of them to maintain a 3-point advantage, which would allow them to foul before the shot and send Carolina to the line. If they miss even one of those, Carolina can tie it with a 2. If they miss both of them, Carolina can win with a 2. So why on earth the coaching staff was calling for a 3 there with 30 seconds left is beyond me. I don't know specifically whose decision or determination that was, but I can only put it on Coach Davis since we don't know. I do not get that. That makes zero sense to me. So again, rare is it that I quibble with being a second guessing the coaching staff or whatever, but in this case, I've got to. That does not add up to me. All right, let's get to our Four Corners preview. RJ Davis set another milestone on Saturday. And while, yes, his 3-point shooting is down, he's finding other ways to help his team win. I want to give you some stats on that and the rest of our Four Corners recap, all coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are so much better with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. You don't even have to win. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. How about some ACC regular season champion odds? Duke still leads the way, minus 470. Good night. Followed by Clemson at plus 600. Pitt at plus 1900, and then the Tar Heels right after that at plus 2100. Man, Carolina has fallen off. Just visit FanDuel.com to get in on that action today. Get started again with $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Time for the Four Corners recap, where we give you four things from this game at Notre Dame on Saturday that I took away that I just thought was key and critical, important, or historic in the case of our first one. RJ Davis, multiple things on him. Number one, big congrats to RJ, whose 8 points allow him to pass some guy named Armando, if you ever heard of him, for second on Carolina's career scoring list. No, in all seriousness, congrats to RJ for passing Armando Bacot into second place on the scoring list. Obviously, Tyler Hansbrough still leads the way, 2,872 career points in 4 years, followed by RJ Davis now at 2,353. Obviously, much more to add on to that. And then Armando Bacot at 2,347. Some other stuff with RJ, though, interestingly, kind of sadly, I guess, really, this is his first time all season not making a three. Despite the troubles, he's still made at least one in every game this season before Saturday, where he only took 3 attempts, was 0 of 3 from deep. In fact, this is just the 6th time in the last 3 seasons. So his junior year, senior year, and this is COVID year, 6 times he's not made a three-pointer in a game. And, you know, last year there was only 1 game. Unfortunately, that was the Alabama Sweet 16 game. Yuck. And then 4 times his junior year. But what's really, really impressive to me about RJ and how his game continues to advance is that although his shooting is down, he's helping this team in a multitude of other ways. Most critically of which, in my opinion, is facilitation. Joining Elliot Cadeau to really help Carolina in this regard. And I know Elliot's been a little bit up and down, but that's why what RJ has done is so important. Elliot, 2 good floor general games in the last 3, so that's encouraging. Hopefully he's moving back in the right direction. But RJ, against Notre Dame on Saturday, 7 assists, just 1 turnover. For the season, he's averaging a career high 4.1 assists per game, has never averaged 4 or more assists per game. He's got the second lowest turnover percentage of his career, or turnovers per game of his career, I guess I should say, 1.7. And all of that culminates to give him the highest assist to turnover ratio of his career at 2.4 to 1. Really good stuff from RJ, but it's not just that. He's averaging the most steals per game of his career at 1.3. Most free throw attempts of his career at 5.0 per game. That's something I had talked about this offseason. RJ Davis, want to see him get to the line even more, take advantage of that North Carolina career high free throw percentage that he shoots. He's the all-time Carolina leader. Get to the free throw line more. That's what he's doing. And one other, while his 3-point field goal percentage is down, his 2-point field goal percentage is the second highest of his career at 48.2%. So that shows that RJ is not just stubbornly saying, yeah, I'm just going to keep launching, which he needs to keep launching, but not like to the neglect of other shots. And that's great because getting inside the arc, he's shooting at a high clip, and we'll take that. Four Corners recap point number 2. Carolina's bench usage has been down the past couple games. Obviously, it makes sense because Seth Trimble has been on the shelf for the last 3 games, and that takes a starter out of the rotation. Not just a starter, but a starter that plays, I think on average, I guess I could pull this, but the second most minutes per game for Carolina this year. I can give you that in real time. Bear with me just a second. Yes, second most minutes per game for Seth Trimble. So obviously, when you take that player out of the rotation and Coach Davis isn't necessarily utilizing anyone to fulfill the rest of those minutes, it makes sense that the bench usage is down, even though Carolina's season-long bench usage is up in terms of the Hubert Davis era. Let me give you the numbers on this. The specific game against Notre Dame was Carolina's lowest bench usage of the season, just 44 minutes and 23 seconds, or 22.19% of all available minutes. That's the first time this season Carolina's bench has played cumulatively under 50 minutes of the game. The previous low was 50 minutes and 56 seconds against Campbell. Now, again, to be fair, the 3 lowest bench usage games of the season are the past 3 games, Campbell, Louisville, and now Notre Dame. But bench points are also down. 13 points against Notre Dame was the second lowest bench points total of the season, tied with Dayton. The lowest was the Louisville game, where Carolina only scored 10. So to be fair, similar to bench usage, the last 3 games have been 3 of the lowest 4 bench scoring games of the season, those 3 and Dayton. So just something to keep an eye on. Is that an outlier because Seth is out, or is it kind of a new normal as Coach Davis starts to tighten his rotation? We'll find out once Seth gets back into the mix. Number 3 in our 4 corners recap: free throws allowed. It's no secret that Carolina's defense has struggled quite a bit this season, allowing 90 points. We talked about that earlier this season, more times already this season than they did in the entirety of like 2 seasons ago, for example, right? A big part of it lately that has started to rear its ugly head is that Carolina has started to have trouble defending without fouling. Carolina has played 15 games. They have allowed the opponent to take 20 or more free throws in 8 of those games, so just north of half. The kicker is that 5 of those where the opponent has taken 20 or more free throw attempts are in the last 5 games, starting with the Florida game up through the present. So that'd be Florida, UCLA, Campbell, Louisville, Notre Dame. All 5 of those opponents have taken 20 or more free throw attempts, with the season high being Wednesday at Louisville. Again, there is some Seth Trimble factored into this. Chucky Hepburn does not take 20 free throws by himself on Wednesday at Louisville if Seth Trimble's playing. Marcus Burton does not go to the free throw line 10 times if Seth Trimble is guarding him, which he would have undoubtedly done most of the game. So there is some Seth Trimble baked into this one as well, but this trend extends longer than Seth Trimble's absence in North Carolina's lineup. And so that's something to keep an eye on, is the free throw rate allowed defensively. Carolina is going to continue to get to the free throw line a ton. That's just part of their DNA, but they've got to get back to learning how to, or being able to defend without fouling. Finally, 4th in our 4 corners recap, one of the things we've been watching a lot lately is Carolina's execution down the stretch. We talked about that some in the first segment. For example, the lack of defensive rebounding at the end of the Florida game, the strong defensive rebounding at the end of the UCLA game, and reverting back to poor defensive rebounding at the end of the Louisville game. So how was the execution down the stretch of this game in multiple areas? A little bit of a mixed bag. Here's what I mean. Shooting. Carolina shot really well down the stretch of this game. Each team's final 8 shot field goal attempts, Notre Dame was 2 of 8. Carolina was 6 of 8. That's how you go win a basketball game on the road. Limiting your opponent's ability to make shots while making shots on your own. Shooting down the stretch, check. Way to go. Taking care of the ball. It's not just about something I watch a lot is either getting more possessions or maintaining your possession. So getting more possessions would be offensive rebounds or steals, for example. Maintaining your possessions wouldn't be not turning the ball over, because the more possessions you have, the more opportunities to shoot you have, the more shots you make, and the more points you score. That's winning basketball. Unfortunately, in this game, Carolina did not do a good job taking care of the ball execution down the stretch. Carolina had 13 turnovers in this game. 5 of them, more than a third, were in the final 6 minutes. That is not a winning recipe for winning on the road. And then thirdly, Carolina did a good job, really, I would say better than solid, better than average job of finishing defensive possessions with rebounds. In the final 8 minutes of the game, the Tar Heels surrendered just 1 offensive rebound to Notre Dame. That's winning basketball. So Carolina, again, mixed bag, but did some nice things down the stretch of this game, obviously making a few key critical end of game baskets, both by Elliot Cadeau there at the very end. So execution, mixed bag. How's that going to look? All of these things that we continue to monitor as it turns around to SMU tomorrow. Will Carolina be able to have a strong first half like they did at Notre Dame? Will they revert? All of that we're going to keep tabs on, and we'll get back to it. All right, we got a little bit more to talk about today. The shady stat of the game. Heels lose another football portaler and somebody we thought might come back with the Bill Belichick hire, but is not. And the weekend whip around, tough loss for UNC women on Sunday. We'll get to all of that coming up in just a second. Right after about game time, attending the new 12-team college football playoff is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. Man, we're down to the semifinals, and it's only going to get more exciting. I remember the playoff atmosphere of other things I've been to, like Carolina beating Duke in the Final Four. Man, these environments are unlike anything else, and I cannot wait to make new memories in the days and months and years ahead. Well, thankfully, Game Time has this new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your events even easier. Basically, it just filters out all the fluff to show you only the very best ticket options. Recently, I used Game Time Picks to help find tickets for an upcoming event for my family. I got Dude Perfect tour tickets for my family for Christmas, and I'm so excited to go. Game Time helped me find great seats, see the view from my seat right in the app, and I was like, yes, that's a great view. Let's do it. So use it. Check it out. Game Time. Also, thinking ahead to this game tomorrow against SMU, I just mentioned, a whole bunch of tickets are available in the upper deck. There's some tickets for under $10 that you can grab. The one I really like, though, row C of the upper deck, just 3 rows back, $23 a pop, 4 seats together, section 228, row C. Great. Go check them out. Snag those tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Time for the Shady Stat of the game. It's a close win, so I don't feel confident wearing my sunglasses today, my shades for Shady Stat. It's just not in the cards today. But here it is. You ready for this? This is a bit crazy. Took me a little bit of research, but always well worth it. Carolina against Notre Dame had 8 blocks. Fighting Irish, 0. Goose egg, not a none. Jalen Washington, by the way, had 5 of them by himself. More of that, please, sir. Thank you very much. Here's the kicker. This was the fifth time in the Hubert Davis era that Carolina's opponents have finished with 0 blocks recorded. Interesting. Great. Here's what's fun. And so I was like, I wonder what the most blocks is that Carolina had in a game where the opponent had 0 in the Hubert Davis era. Well, guess what? This was the most. So I was like, let me go back and see when the last time Carolina had more than 8 blocks in a game where their opponent had 0. Last time, all the way back, you got to go till 2013, December 21st, 2013 against Davidson. Wildcats had 0 blocks. North Carolina had 11. How about that? Pretty crazy stuff. All right, there's your Shady Stat of the game. Football news, sad football news. Travis Shaw really hoped and thought that maybe he would come back after entering the portal, but finding out about the Bill Belichick news. He does not. And in fact, he's now committed to Texas. Ugh. Sad day. And of course, my wife is a Texas fan, and so now I have to be mad at her about that. No good. Okay. Weekend whip around. Women's basketball unfortunately loses to Notre Dame at home on Sunday, 76-66. Great effort by the ladies. Just a tough. Notre Dame is so good, as we talked about last Friday. The Tar Heels are now 13-3 overall, 1-2 in ACC play. And Notre Dame led 40-28 at the half. And I got to be honest, Carolina had a really valiant effort in the second half. They ultimately won the second half 38-34, but that halftime deficit was just too big. I guess they've been hanging out with the guys team a little bit too much. Is that a low blow? That's a low blow. When you look at stats that stood out in this game, it's interesting because there was a whole bunch of stats that were very similar, but there were some that really stood out. Let me give you some examples. Notre Dame obliterated Carolina in second chance points 20-8. A lot of the shooting numbers were very similar, actually. Field goals. Notre Dame was 29 of 60, Carolina 27 of 63. Notre Dame was shooting 48%, Carolina 43. Very close, just a couple shots different each. Free throws, very similar. Notre Dame 5 of 8, Carolina 6 of 9. Almost identical. But this is the kicker. This is the massive big difference, and to me, the biggest stat difference in the game. 3-point shooting. Notre Dame shot 62% from 3, while the Tar Heels were 29. Both teams took 21 threes. The difference is that Notre Dame made 13 of them, while Carolina only made 6. In fact, Notre Dame was 13 of 17 at one point. That's absurd. I didn't even look up what that percentage would have been. 13 divided by 17. Had they stopped there, they would have made 76.5% of their threes. That's otherworldly good. So these teams took the same amount of three-point attempts, but Notre Dame was plus 21 scoring-wise from deep. And in a game that you lose by 10, that's it, man. That's almost impossible to offset when they're that hot. A couple other statistical categories were most of the rest were similar, but there was a couple others that stood out. Rebounding. Notre Dame led rebounding 40-28. That is not a recipe for winning. But turnovers, Carolina dominated that category. 21 forced Notre Dame turnovers, while Carolina turned it over 13 times. So there's that. Least shocking news of the day, Alyssa Usby gets a double-double, her 44th of her career, 12 points, 11 boards. Maria Gakdang almost does the same, 16 points, 9 rebounds. Unsurprisingly, Hannah Hidalgo has a phenomenal game for Notre Dame. I'm not even going to give you her stat line because it'll just be absurd. Two other sports teams in action for Carolina this weekend. Wrestling was in the Southern Scuffle down in Chattanooga on campus at UTC. The Mocs. Carolina had 4 semifinalists: Spencer Moore, Ethan Oakley, Jaden Scott, and Marcus Murabito. Unfortunately, none of them won, although Spencer Moore and Jaden Scott both advanced to the final. Spencer lost 5-0, while Jaden lost 2-0. So a nice showing this weekend. Unfortunately, none of the Tar Heels able to win their weight class there. Swimming and diving, it was the UGA Diving Invitational down in Athens. And speaking of least shocking news of the day, Aranza Vazquez Montano does what she does, won the 1 meter diving board, the 3 meter, and came second in platform. So she's just out here doing her usual business. Great stuff for the Tar Heels there. All right, guys, great to be able to kick off another week of Locked On Tar Heels together. Thanks so much for joining. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, do it now. Just click that button right down there at the bottom. Help us to get to 10,000 YouTube subscribers in 3 years. We got a little under 2 months to get there, and we need your help. If you haven't subscribed before, do it right now. Man, thank you so much for doing that. If you haven't joined the Locked On Tar Heels Discord family, we'd love to have you there as well. That link's in the show notes. Absolutely free to join. Hundreds of Tar Heel fans in there. We're talking all the time. It's great. Also, join Locked On Tar Heels Insiders, a great way to go even deeper with the program. Connect with me through texting one-on-one. You get access to all my stats and charts and data, all that stuff and other perks as well. Just $5 a month after a 2-week free trial. Great way to help support the show as well. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Hey, let's go get another win tomorrow. We'll talk then to set up the game. Got some other interesting stuff on what happens when Seth Trimble comes back. Obviously, after the game, we'll have our live post-game reaction show as well. But until then, peace.